Hey everybody, this is just Megan here, one of the Fat Girl Chronicle podcasters. I just wanted to let you know that this week the podcast can get a little bit heavy and we're talking about things like mental health and body image. So the first half is a little bit more deep and can be triggering to some. So just go into the podcast knowing that it might bring up some feelings. Certainly, if you have some feelings that are brought up, we encourage you to reach out, seek help. If you're watching this on YouTube, we will comment below with some numbers in case you do need to reach out. Otherwise, we hope you enjoy, and thank you again for listening.
Shining bright, sunshine in the sky, Megan and Tammy here to testify, spreading love, laughter and good vibes too. The Fat Girl Chronicles, we're breaking through. No more.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fat Girl Chronicles. We're the Fat Girl Flippers, and we are here today to talk about how being plus size impacts your mental health. We've talked to a lot of our viewers and got some feedback. So Megan's got a couple things to say, and then we're going to get right into it.
Yeah. So welcome to another episode of Fat Girl Chronicles. Like Tammy said, we're super excited. If you are watching this on YouTube, we would love if you could hit that subscribe button, throw a couple comments down below, maybe a like, and definitely hit that bell so you get notified every time we have a new episode out. And also we are on various podcast streams. So we're on Podbean and we're on Podcast Addict, and we're working on a few others. So make sure to check us out there. If you like to just, hang out in your car and travel and listen to the podcast, that's fair. But yeah, make sure you're subscribing, and we're so thankful for all of the listeners that have been with us since the beginning of Fat Girl Flippers, but also the new people that have come in and joined us as well. So thank you.
So welcome, everybody.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm
Thank
Tammy,
you.
and this is Megan.
Yeah.
And we are the Fat Girl Flippers. So yeah, we're just going to get right into it. So I just want to start out with a quote from one of our girlies when we were asking for feedback.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is going to be the center of what we focus on right now.
Yeah.
So when we asked for feedback about what kind of topics we wanted to talk about in mental health, this is what we got. Mm-hmm. And I'm quoting. Trying to have a positive self-image when society makes you feel inadequate, dirty, or lazy.
Yeah. I think that rings so true, right? And I think we talk a lot about how we don't fit. Literally, we don't fit. And so there is a lot of, stuff. All you need to do is go on some sort of plus size influencers blog or TikTok or whatever.
Go in the comments
to see what is being said, to know that would have an impact on your mental health. So we can appreciate that that's what people wanted to talk about.
And I think it starts, like, some people have been chubby or bigger their whole entire lives. So it's a learned thing that from childhood that, you're not what society wants.
Right.
And that you may need to change, or
right.
you may need to diet, or you may need to exercise, or
right.
There's all kinds of advice for people, but there's, I think, less looking into what is the cause of it rather than how to treat it.
Right. Yeah, I definitely. And I think like the girlie who shared that quote with us, she said, trying to have that positive self-image because society makes you feel inadequate and dirty and lazy.
That's the image that so many of us have of being like, people think that you're like, for me, and I'm going to speak personally, I always felt like I grew up in a society where if you rested or took time for self-care, you were being lazy. So if you were bigger and you did that, then you were fat and lazy, and then you would get scrutinized for that. Like, why are you sitting around, or why are you doing this, or why are you doing that? When in reality, like, that self-care is really, really important for your mental health and for your physical health.
Yeah.
And it's like an awful cycle to get in.
Yeah.
And I think I would say many of us that are plus size are in that cycle of, how we feel about ourselves also impacts our mental health.
Yeah, it does. And, when you think of mental health, I mean, mental health is such a buzzword right now. It's used a lot. And a couple of other buzzwords would be like anxiety and depression, and like all of these things are buzzwords right now. Everyone's kind of talking about the evolution of mental health and how we're starting to shift and focus on it and treat it like a physical illness or whatever, which I don't think is necessarily true in actual real life, because I don't think that people think of it like a physical disability, which is unfortunate.
The majority of people don't. No.
From our lived experience, at least, that's what we've kind of come up to the conclusion of. But I lost my train of thought. I was just gonna say, when we talk about mental health, we are talking about, it's such a broad term. So in this aspect, we're talking about like body image and how we view our bodies, and how society has really kind of emphasized how we feel about our bodies. But we can also be talking in terms of like anxiety, and how, I hear all the time, well, just like, go to the, I want this person to go to the gym with me. I've offered many times, and, really thinking about, okay, but what is the gym to a fat person?
It's a scary place to be.
It can be a scary place to be.
And it's an intimidating place to be, because there's a lot of people there that have worked very hard to have beautiful bodies, and they're maintaining them.
Or what society thinks is a beautiful body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is not a lot of representation of plus size there. And it's really hard, because society says to us, on one hand, diet, exercise, do all these things. But when you try to do the things, then you get judged.
Yeah.
And it makes it, and then you retreat.
Yeah.
And then you get fatter.
Yeah.
And then it's like a cycle.
Yeah. So I think, when we talk about, when we say how it impacts our mental health, I guess my point is that we're talking more so like body image, we're talking anxiety, we're talking feelings
Depression.
of being depressed, sadness, feelings of embarrassment, feelings of humiliation,
unworthiness.
Yeah, I was just gonna say unworthiness.
Feeling like you don't belong. I have a
whole list.
I do have a whole list, because I wrote them down the other day. And it's funny, because I was feeling bad, and I didn't think about this before we started.
Yeah.
Read what I had written.
Yeah.
I wrote, I hate myself. I'm too fat to live in this world. And then I wrote shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, sadness, worry, hate, anger, misery, not worthy, mistake, no purpose, why me, isolation, loneliness, lack of community. Like, that was just me, because I was feeling that way, and I'm a doodler, so I write things down.
Right.
But it just, talking about this just made me think of what I had written down. Written down.
Yeah, so it can really, to put it bluntly, like I said earlier, we really don't fit into the world. There is a lot of things that people don't think about. So there are something as simple as, when I go to a restaurant, so I actually, to backtrack a little bit, I actually did a presentation at my work a couple of months ago, and it was how to create safe places for fat bodies, but also to talk about like fat phobia. And one of the things that I talked about was that, I'm in the social work field. So one of the things I talked about was you have to be mindful when you take a client to a restaurant, because booths can be really scary. So it's oftentimes like, sorry, just when I got distracted. So it's oftentimes around booths in restaurants can be really harmful.
Seating in general
is plane seats, bus seats,
plastic lawn chairs.
Like, these are all things that we literally don't fit in as people.
Even furniture.
Right. Bathroom stalls. People don't think about these things, right? Because when you live in a world where your body fits, you wouldn't think about these things. Because why would you? Because
it's like when you
wouldn't know.
It's the same as having a physical disability, like being in the wheelchair, for example, because I'm in the chair.
Yeah.
I now notice accessibility issues that I didn't notice before.
Right. So, all of those things, like literally not fitting in the world that you are in, can be exhausting, and that exhaustion can lead to feelings like Tammy described: unworthiness, anxiety, depression, just feelings of self-hatred.
You mentioned going to a restaurant. Another thing I thought of is, like we were talking about, are people looking at what I'm eating? Like, because people generally...
Lots of paranoia.
Yeah, lots of paranoia around, do I order what I want versus do I order what society thinks I should be eating?
Right. That fear of, like...
if I get what I want...
if I'm the only one with fries and I didn't order a salad... right? I've not been in the dating world really. I've gone like since I was young.
You're lucky.
Yeah. So when it comes to going on dates and stuff, like, I'm sure that also is a factor. Like, what do you do, that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know.
You talked about dating, and I mean, I've kind of removed myself from the dating world because of the anguish and mental stress that it has put on me. But that's one of the things I immediately, when I'm talking to somebody and potentially going to go on a date with, is I immediately tell them, well, I have lipedema, my legs are larger than normal, and I'm in a wheelchair.
Right.
And 3/4 of the people are going to just ghost you.
Right.
Before that even gets to the date topic. But I feel like if I tell them that now, at least I don't have to deal with the stress of them picking me up and,
and finding
going all and having them look you up and down like you're some kind of, whatever, oversized piece of meat.
Right.
Yeah. And it's scary. And I mean, there's the element of even going to the doctor and having something wrong with you, and then they immediately start talking about your weight, and that's not what you're there for. You could have a broken arm, and they would be still, oh, well, you really need to diet and exercise, and you really should get your BMI down. And
Right.
And then you go home and you feel so bad about yourself that you eat. A lot of people eat as that's their comfort.
Right.
And it's like a cycle that never ends.
Yeah.
It's like you're on this revolving train.
Right. I mean, I think we know that shame doesn't work, but it's often used.
Yeah.
In general society.
Highly used in society.
Yeah, it is. And, I was having the conversation yesterday about, I was asked a very, very valid question, which was, because I am in the process of losing weight, like, how I can be still body positive but also lose weight. Like, what does that do to the people that are watching you, type of thing. And I very much see those as two very different things. So I see that I'm only losing weight because, and it's taken me a full year to lose 40 pounds. People lose 40 pounds in months. It's taken me a full year, like pretty much over a year, to lose that weight. Because for me, it's been about understanding my relationship with food. Understanding my relationship with food has been very much a coping strategy and not eating for fuel. It's also been about understanding my mental health and getting diagnosis and seeking treatment, like therapy, like medications, whatever. So for me, it's been a healing journey, and it literally has nothing to do with my actual body. It's my healing journey versus how I view my body. And a lot of people put those hand in hand. And I just feel like they're two different things. but a lot of people use that and put them together, like, you know, your weight and your healing journey is the same thing, but it really isn't. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the quote again from our viewer who said that you're inadequate, dirty, or lazy.
Yeah.
The lazy thing has been something that's really impacted me a lot, especially being like disabled and in the chair now.
Yeah. Yes.
And you feel lesser than anyway. You really, when you have mobility issues and you have to use a mobility aid, it really messes with your mental health. And then being plus size on top of that, it's not nice. Yeah. I guess, I don't know if you want me to talk about the incident I had the other day with the bus thing, and
that's up to you.
Well, I just feel like I should share because the humiliation and shame that came from that was huge, and I'm just able to talk about it now without crying. And it happened 3 weeks ago, probably, or 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it's 2 weeks ago.
So there's a bus service in our town that is supposed to be for disabled and, well, it's supposed to be for everybody. And everybody includes disabled people. It's handicap accessible.
Yeah.
I received a call from the company. I had finally gotten to the point where I was able to get out and go to swimming once a week, which is one of the only things I can do for my disorder that I have. So I was going on the bus and everything was fine. I thought everything was fine. It was great. I received a call from the bus company saying, "Oh, we heard you had an incident, that you fell off the wheelchair lift and that the driver had to grab you and da-da-da-da-da." None of that was true. And then the next thing she asked me was, "How much do you weigh?" So I told her, and she said, "How much does your wheelchair weigh?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, you're too heavy for our lift." So immediately I started crying and hung up the phone because I couldn't talk. I was just, again, and that's the day I wrote all those things down, right? That I'm too fat for this world and all of that. And I don't think people understand the extent of damage that you can do to somebody mentally by doing things like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It just reminds me of like figuring out, like, people really don't understand, like you said, people really don't understand the impact that it has on a person to really talk about weight. And I mean, another one of our followers also wanted us to talk about mental health in relation to plus size bodies. And, she mentioned it's so hard when you're having things like shoved down your throat, right? And so
social media,
like different images, different fashion trends on smaller bodies. And, when you think about an image of, and I want everybody just to kind of practice this for a second. I want you to think of an image of a woman in a wheelchair that's thin, generally thin to your standard. And then I want you to think about a woman in a wheelchair who would be, quote unquote, fat or plus size, whatever term you feel comfortable with and whatever size you kind of picture in your mind. There is going to be a vast difference in the way many people will view those two images.
I've already had people ask me or assume that I'm in this chair because I'm obese, not because I have anything wrong with me.
For sure, right.
I've had 2 people actually approach me, perfect strangers, and inquire about that and suggest to me that I should exercise. Mm-hmm. Perfect strangers.
Mm-hmm. So
one was buying something from me on Marketplace.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I had to anyway. Yeah.
So those two things, like those two images are very different. And again, it goes back to, just like our beautiful follower said, like how this world makes us feel useless, worthless, lazy, all of these things. Dirty is another one. I mean, if you ask a lot of plus size people, like any sort of gender, any sort of human that is plus size, the fear of smelling. I guarantee you, for many people of size, smelling is an actual fear. And not like, oh God, like I hope I forgot deodorant today. Like,
how many times have I asked you when you came in here, does my apartment smell okay?
Yeah.
How many times have I asked you
Yeah,
that?
like 1,000,001. So like that is always a concern, right? Again, it goes back to that dirty, the lazy, gross, right? And I think it really stems back to society viewing a larger body as someone who is out of control, who's grotesque, who is just unable to preserve themselves or their body or to restrain themselves, right? When we think of that.
It's like they feel like we have no control.
Right.
Over anything.
Right.
Or
right.
that a lot of times they think we're mentally incapable of comprehending what we need to do to fix ourselves.
Right.
So then you get labeled as you're stupid on top of you're
Right.
fat and you're lazy.
Yeah. So like there is so much kind of unconscious cultural things that happen and different, what I would say is like ideologies around fat bodies, which really then in turn like makes us internalize our own crap, And so I think it does.
And you get in that never-ending cycle of depression and anxiety and angst and anger and feeling inadequate and like you may feel really, really good. Like that day that happened to me, I was so happy because I had just come home from swimming and I was happy and thought, this is great. I'm getting out and whatever. And that it broke me.
Yeah. And because
mentally it broke me.
Yeah. But, that incident, what I would say is that the incident, yes, could have broken you, but really what it is a lifetime of that incident. And it's just when it continues and continues and continues, you do break, right? Like, and that's where that mental health piece comes in. Because eventually when you're told one thing so much, that's what happens, right? You break. So yeah.
It's just mental health is, I don't think there's a plus size person out there that probably hasn't faced discrimination and had mental health, issues because of that. And, we talk about like chairs, for example, airline seats, like we were talking about plastic lawn chairs, bus seats, everything, benches, booths, the whole gamut of wherever it's like we don't fit in society.
Right.
And when you find some place that you fit, that's the only place you want to go because you fit.
Right.
But it impacts you feel like there's no place for you in this world.
Right.
Like that you're too big for everything or you're just, your whole mental health is just focused on that all the time.
Right. So I guess, because I feel like we're almost talking in circles here, because we're saying the same thing. Yeah. So I guess to flip that, like both people really wanted us to also mention like how to improve your mental health, how to navigate that. And I think that's important too, right?
Yes.
Like this stuff is so heavy and there's so many different things, and we will come on at later dates and talk more specifically about certain things that happen, and maybe even bring in some statistics and stuff like that. So we will do some of that stuff, but for right now, I think maybe just spinning it into like a positive. So like, what are some things that you have done to navigate this? Like, what are some things that you have done to help your mental health in relation to all of these things that bring us down?
Well, I can tell you for one thing, it's really, really important if you're experiencing this is that you reach out to someone that you know is going to help you. And that my suggestion would be to find a good counselor
Yeah.
It may not be a quick process. No. But if you have access to health insurance, private health insurance, I would utilize that the best you can.
Yeah.
And I would get your name on the wait list to see mental health.
Yeah.
Because everybody, I think, has some issues around it. And even a few counseling sessions, if you can get them, a lot of times are helpful. Because a lot of times we will tell counselors things that we would not tell our friends, that we would not tell our family.
For sure.
Because they're strangers, right? So they're supposed to not judge us.
Yep.
I think that's excruciatingly important that you get a counselor or quote unquote someone you can talk to that's going to make you feel better. I think incorporating self-care is really important, and learning to have self-care without the guilt of, oh, well, I shouldn't be doing that, or I'm taking up too much space, or
right,
like whatever.
Yeah. And self-care, again, is another buzzword that everyone says, and it's so important. And that's what drives me nuts about self-care, because it is so important, but people often misconstrue it or reduce it.
Having a bubble bath.
Everything is all about reducing, and I think that speaks volumes to the way that we view fat bodies, right? Everything is about reduction, really like shrinking and categorizing, all of that stuff. So but self-care can be anything. Self-care can be reading. Self-care can be taking 5 minutes and doing some deep breathing. Self-care can be talking to a friend.
For me, it's nature.
Self-care can be nature. Self-care can be going for a drive. Like, self-care can be anything that helps you. Self-care can be watching Netflix.
Get that boost of dopamine in you that's going to give you a little bit of a high. Yeah. Do something for yourself that makes you feel good. It doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote the traditional self-care, give yourself a bubble bath or facial or something. Yeah. It can be, if you like four-wheeling and that gives you brain freedom and makes you feel good, that's a self-care.
Yeah.
If going for a drive with your spouse and just having a picnic or doing something like that, or even grabbing a coffee and going and sitting somewhere pretty, you know, like you guys did the other night, taking pictures.
Exactly. The Northern Lights.
The Northern Lights. Like, do something that's going to increase the dopamine in your brain. And even me, because I'm kind of isolated here and I'm in the chair, I've realized now that the weather is nicer, I'm forcing myself every day just to go down to the mailbox.
Oh, yes.
And I sit by the mailbox and I do the deep breathing for a few minutes. Yeah. And then I come back in. But at least I've got myself outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's self-care is so important. And
it really does affect, change the brain pattern so that you're going from a negative thought to a positive.
Yeah. So, because here's something interesting about the brain, is that our brain creates pathways. And so what happens is a pathway is built into your brain and it becomes the norm because it's the easiest way to think, right? There's no it's just like walking across a bridge, there's nothing complicated about, you don't have to think about anything else. It's just,
it
just is what it is.
To ruts. Say you had a muddy road, a muddy dirt road.
For sure. That's
and it's like the ruts are in the road and they're there, and that's the only way you can travel because the ruts are there.
Right.
To make a new path is difficult.
Very difficult. So you can imagine either building a new rut or building a new bridge, a new road, whatever it is really difficult. It's really difficult for your brain. And so, like what you said, when you the first time I was called fat was when I was 5 years old. I was on a playground. I can remember that clear as day, as if it was yesterday. My whole life has been spent calling me names, dealing with fatness almost the entirety of my life. And so my brain is very much programmed to think these negative things, because these are the negative things that
society has pushed at you since a child.
I was born in 92. The 90s was kind of those prime days of my life, and we all know what the standard was in the 90s. It wasn't super fat friendly, you know? So that's how my brain is programmed. So to your point, it is very much about having to literally reprogram your brain into new pathways.
The other thing is, when I mentioned counseling, I've been in counseling, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I've been in counseling for years. The last 7 years I've been in counseling intensively at times. And it's been difficult. But am I in a better place, and can I make better decisions now about when someone says something to me? It still doesn't, like, it's not like water off a duck's back. It doesn't go away. But I can use the tools that I've learned to shift my brain focus, but it takes work, because it's like it's retraining to those pathways, right?
You're retraining.
Because
you're literally changing biology.
My go-to is to, I feel awful, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And you're automatically in that anxious, depressed, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
But if you can take that and turn it around and either make it, I've tried recently to make things a teaching moment. Instead of taking it defensively, perhaps, like, especially people approaching me in the wheelchair and saying things, I take the opportunity to educate them about the fact that I have a disease.
Yeah.
You know, and then people are like, oh, you know, and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
So it's a little different.
I like that, because, you know, one of the biggest things about mental health and, you know, struggling with these things is a lot of this thrives on shame.
Yes.
So when you take a teachable moment, so say for example, like you said, someone approached Tammy about her size and her being in a wheelchair, and so what that could
it was a child
right?
on an elevator at the hospital with his mother.
Yeah. So what that could do is bring a lot of shame. And then Tammy could wheel away and stew on it and think about it and really, really struggle with that, which she may have done a little bit, right? You may have struggled.
I did.
In the past, right?
I had to reprocess it after I left.
For sure. But you could also make it a teachable moment and say, look, this is actually whatever you want to make it teachable about. Not all bodies that use a wheelchair are big, or my size that actually has nothing to do with me being in a wheelchair, or whatever that teachable moment is.
Actually, what the thing it was a little boy, and he was probably 4 or 5, and he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, why are her legs so big?"
Right.
And he said it really, really loud. We're in an elevator. I can't get away from it, right?
So, no, fair.
And I mean, he was a sweet little guy, and it was just an innocent question, because kids do ask questions. And I just explained that my legs are this way because I have a disorder, and that causes them to be that way. And he was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "Is that why you use the wheelchair?" And I explained, "Yes, that's why." And then he was good. Like, we got off the elevator and he waved goodbye and all was well. And I didn't feel horrible, although I will admit, I did come home and I did think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it wasn't like the bus incident.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, reworking things into a teachable moment. And you know, the other flip of the coin of that is that it can be exhausting. Like, if you go on to comments, like, I would bother doing teachable moments in person. I would never, ever, ever, ever in my entire life try to make a teachable moment out of the comment section. It's just, it gets so...
I tried on
Yeah, it gets so spicy, like, it's just unreal. Yeah. And so...
People are mean, especially when they're behind a computer screen and they
for sure
can't see you face to face. People tend to be mean.
Right. So, you know, bringing into a teachable moment is an awesome idea. And a tip that I would think of for helping your mental health, and we talked about this, I think, on the first podcast around social media, but was like picking and choosing who you follow, what you follow, the content that you like, but also like finding community. And that is one thing I am so proud of us for doing with Fat Girl Flippers, is that we have created a community where women and all sorts of people, mainly, I guess we're mainly women. We mainly have women.
Mainly women. We do have some men that follow us. Yeah.
So our audience has been like just fantastic about just like building each other up, and we've been very, very specific about not talking about things like weight loss or diets or things like...
We want to get away from the weight loss diet culture. We would just want to celebrate people and the clothing and looking good and feeling good.
Yeah, and I think again that is why, for me, like when it comes back to that question of well, how can you be body positive and still lose weight, it's because they're separate. It is because they're separate. I loved my body the same way I love it today as I loved it 40 pounds ago. And I'll probably still love it the same way as I love it, I don't know, 20 pounds or whatever the hell I lose after that. Like, I don't know. I don't have a goal. I'm just learning to heal from my past stuff. And that's a result of it. So, yeah. So I feel like bringing that sense of community. And I'm super proud of us because of Fat Girl Flippers.
And it's funny because when we were talking about when we were getting ready to do this podcast, we were looking for a couple of ideas, and both of us thought of two people, and we reached out to them, and boom, just like that, they answered us back with, so I mean, that you've built a community, because these are not people that were our personal friends.
Yeah.
These are people that, that belong to the community who have become friends, but not people we text on a regular basis.
No.
And we just asked them, and both of us text somebody different, and we got quick replies and good replies.
Yeah.
And it's great to have that community. And it's like when we're selling clothes, when we're live, and somebody new is in the comments. I love that when somebody new is in the comments and they ask a question.
Yes.
We don't even have to answer them, because somebody from our community will jump in and answer them, and everybody greets them and says hi and welcome, and it's just that's that shot of dopamine that that you need.
Yeah, and I think that is so important. And again, just really focusing on who you follow, what content you are engaging in, because if you are, when I was growing up, when you were growing up, because even when I was growing up, there was just TV. There was no internet. I mean, I don't think I got my phone till I was late in high school. There was, the dial-up internet, whatever. And so there was not a lot of examples except for what you saw on TV, right? And what you saw on TV was not anything of diverse.
Because back in the day, TV was made with what society deemed perfect people. There were not plus-size people on TV back in the day.
No. So now we have this opportunity to be able to engage with content of people that look like us.
Yes.
Whether it's size or something else, we can engage with people that look like us. And I think that is so important. Super important.
I think that it makes you, for me, going on, because social media, I have a love-hate relationship with social media.
Yeah.
Because it can take me down just immediately.
Yeah.
Or it can really rise me up and make me laugh or giggle or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you go on there and I will watch somebody, I think of Anna from Glitters and Laser.
Yes.
And I love her. Part of the reason I love her is because she has the same disorder that I have.
Right.
But when I go in the comments, it's I get so mad. I want to answer every one of those people that are negative to her and tell them she has a disorder. Do you know how hard it is for her to lose weight? And she's working so hard. And, and people call her obese. They call her that she's promoting fat society. There's just,
oh my gosh, if I have to
you look the same as you did 2 years ago. Why aren't you working harder? Obviously you're eating behind the camera and not telling us. And just
promoting obesity is
yes.
I hate that one.
And I mean, we're not opposed to anybody being healthy, because we both feel like we should be healthy people. I don't feel like we should not be healthy.
I just strongly feel that, I don't think, if you want to live the most unhealthiest way of all time, and this is not even about body, if you just want to be super unhealthy, whatever, that is your choice.
That's on you.
That's your choice. So you're never going to change somebody by shaming them in the name of them becoming more healthy. Mm-hmm. I should be able to go for a walk in town and not be stopped to say, oh, good for you for getting out there and walking and all that stuff. Because that's what happens. When you start moving, it's oh.
Oh, I've heard it. It's the same when you're in the chair and you go somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you for getting out.
Just
it's I'm going to a damn doctor's appointment. It's not I'm going out to the park.
Yeah, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can see our faces are
we're all scrunched up.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I want to mention this because it's important.
Yeah.
We have a shortage of doctors here in Nova Scotia, and a lot of people don't have a doctor, but those of us, or some of us, have a doctor, and the doctors are not always body positive, or I think I mentioned this in the beginning, that they can be very down on you and look at your weight as the only thing that is your problem.
For sure.
So it's important that you get somebody on your team. And you have to advocate for yourself. That's a big one. You have
or bring
to,
somebody that can advocate for you, like that
that
you trust.
Need to find somebody in the healthcare field that you can connect with, be it a dietitian, a physiotherapist, an occupational therapist. For me, my lifesaver was my physiotherapist, and her name's Natalie, and she's amazing.
Yeah.
And she's on my team, and I know that I can call on her at any given time to help me, to raise me up, to, encourage me, to remind me of all the things that I've done. And it's important that you find somebody in the medical field that connects with you, that you can.
So that's another tip.
Yeah.
Right? That's another tip. And I am sure that you will see a podcast on here talking about the medical field. I mean, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, it's a whole other podcast.
And we will talk about it. That is going to be one of the upcoming ones at some point. But that's a good tip.
Don't get too down if your doctor is not the friendliest or not the greatest to deal with and focuses a lot on your weight. Try and find somebody in the medical field that you can connect with. And it might be your counselor, it might be your psychologist, it could be whoever you need,
The question I was going to ask was, so when you are in that moment of watching like the comments like in her posts and you're getting really upset, what do you do to help yourself there?
It's unfortunate, but I have to that's why I say I have the love-hate relationship with social media.
Yep.
I have to close it.
Yep.
A lot of times I go on to write a positive comment to her, but I start reading, that's my mistake. I start reading the comments. I forget that I didn't leave her a positive comment, and I get bogged down by the negative ones. And I'm sure that probably happens to a lot of people, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I would say keep watching, stay out of the comments, keep watching the people that are what you would call your tribe. Find people that you have similar interests to. It doesn't mean they have to have the same body as you or anything like that, but find things that bring you joy, bring you up. Things that's going to help your mental health a lot, is just finding something that, whatever it is. Yeah. Like I said, if it's four-wheeling, if it's crocheting, if it's thrifting, there's everything. And YouTube is a great tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so basically, the world is not a kind place, and I mean, it can certainly be, but if you have extra weight on, or if you're deemed fat or obese or overweight or whatever it is, it's often a lot more difficult for you, and that can really have an impact on all sorts of things regarding mental health, whether it's self-esteem, whether it's having anxiety, feelings of sadness, depression, unworthiness. Tammy listed them all off earlier. Anger, everything.
Fear, everything.
Yeah. And, I definitely don't want to sugarcoat it, but I'm glad that we talked about some positive strategies, because it can be overwhelming, because it's usually every day of our lives. Like, there's something that happens every day, whether that's you're going to a restaurant, or you can't find your favorite piece of clothing that will fit you just right, or whatever it is.
And that's the thing. And I think that people that are in so-called normal or smaller bodies don't have to think about those things when they're going out. We have to think, oh my God, we're going to that restaurant. Am I going to fit in those chairs? Oh my God, for me, I'm going to be like, is it accessible or whatever?
Yeah.
And then when you get inside, are you going to be able to use the bathroom?
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
Yep. So it is important to look at, yes, the world is a very mean place and can be a very mean place, but we want to make it a happy place. We want to make it a happy place. And, if you are somebody who isn't plus size or doesn't consider themselves to be plus size, or whatever the case may be, and you're listening to this, being a really good friend and support for people and advocating for things is so important. And then if you are, just really being mindful of what you need to do to take care of yourself.
And remember to reach out for help.
and to reach out for help. Yes.
That's important.
Both of us are in counseling or in therapy, and both of us have really benefited from it. So,
yes, absolutely.
You know, certainly in like, I don't know what it's like in everywhere else, but it is really hard to get like publicly funded mental health services. It's a long process, and it's really difficult.
And the other thing is you don't have a lot of choices. They give you a counselor, and you hope that you connect with them. You don't have the ability. If you had private health care, you could pick and choose who you want.
To some extent, yeah. So with private health care, like for example,
but it's limited.
Mine is $500 a year, and sessions are normally $200. So you can just do the math right there, right? And so, regardless, it's really hard, and I think that reaching out for help is great. There's lots of different lines if you're struggling. Maybe we'll post that on the description. So on the description below, we'll post some like
mental health hotlines.
Yes, thank you. That's for the hotlines. Yeah. Now I got the song stuck in my head, but anyway, hotlines and stuff. The
other thing I want to mention is that there are a lot more resources out there than we realize, and I find that a lot of times they're buried, and healthcare doesn't share them very well.
Yeah, so we can share some of those in the description.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what we'll do. And is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just want to say to people, if you're, again, please reach out if you're having issues. And if you have any questions or anything around this topic that you'd like to see us discuss further in detail, please throw it down in the comments. I don't think there's anything... else.
And if you're just looking for a little bit of support or want to share your story or whatever,
we're here to listen.
We're here to listen. Feel free to. I don't know if YouTube has an inbox, but Fat Girl Flippers.
We have
the comments, and then the Fat Girl
We have
Flippers
Instagram.
page.
We have TikTok. We have all of them. So
our Fat Girl Flippers page does have an inbox, so you can always message us there. All right. Well. Another episode done.
Another episode under our belt. Thank you so much. We love you, and mwah!
No more feeling small. We're taking up space, standing proud and tall. Our voice is strong, our stories to be heard, challenging the stereotypes.